Genghis Khan and his family. What they did, dude, they killed 10% of the population of Earth while he was alive. They killed so many people that they affected the carbon footprint of human beings on Earth. For centuries, Genghis Khan's tomb wasn't just hidden. It was wiped from existence. Rivers were forced to change course. Forests grew to bury every trace. And the men who laid him to rest vanished forever. Every whispered legend was a carefully planted lie. Historians searched in vain and adventurers disappeared chasing it. No one was ever meant to find it. However, now against every myth and secret, it has finally been uncovered. Genghis Khan's tomb opened after 1,000 years, and the discovery shocked the world. How an outcast became history's deadliest conqueror. Imagine waking up in a world where your entire tribe wants you gone. That was Temujin's reality before he became Genghis Khan. For the longest time, he was exiled, betrayed, and hunted like an animal on the frozen Mongolian steppes. But by the early 1200s, he had united the warring Mongol tribes under the one name, Genghis Khan. How did he do it? He ripped apart old tribal loyalties and rebuilt his army from scratch. Forget birthrights. In his ranks, only skill mattered. Within Genghis military, men were divided into official ranks. 10 men formed a group called Arban. 10 Arbans formed a Jagan. 10 Jugans became a Minghan. And 10 Mingans made up a Twen. Altogether, 10,000 warriors ready to ride or die. Each unit was commanded by leaders chosen not by bloodline, but by sheer merit. But here's where it gets terrifying. His soldiers weren't just fighters. They were masters of deception. There were lightning-fast cavalry charges, feigned retreats that lured entire armies into deadly traps, and psychological warfare so ruthless that entire cities surrendered without a single arrow fired. And this was just the beginning of Genghis Khan's unstoppable reign. Between 127 and 1225, entire kingdoms would vanish in a single week. From western Shia to Khwarezm. Why? Because Genghis Khan wasn't just conquering land. He was unleashing hell. Cities like Samarkand and Bukhara were obliterated. Survivors were rare and the message was clear. Resist and face extinction. But here's the twist you probably didn't expect. This ruthless warrior wasn't only about bloodshed. He was also a visionary statesman. What made Genghis Khan's empire unstoppable? Under his rule came the Yasa, which was a legal code that ensured strict discipline and unexpected justice. Within this code, diplomats were protected, merchants could travel safely, and religious freedom was granted, even though that was a radical concept in his time. So, how did Genghis manage an empire stretching from the Pacific to the Caspian? He recruited the best administrators and scholars, aka Muslims, Chinese, Persians, people who knew how to build systems that lasted. Through them, he created the Yam, a postal relay so efficient that messages traveled faster across his empire than in many modern countries today. The result was a thing called Pax Mongolica. A rare era of peace that stretched across Eurasia. Bandit-infested caravan trails turned into bustling highways of trade. The Silk Road came alive. Ideas, religions, and technologies flowed like rivers unblocked. However, when Genghis Khan passed away, his era of power didn't just end. It left behind a mystery so deep that historians are still searching for its answer. So, how did it all come crashing down for Genghis? How did Genghis meet his end? As the story goes, Genghis passed away in the summer of 1227 along the upper reaches of the Yellow River. He was nearly 70 but still on the warpath, crushing the Tangut kingdom under his iron will. Yet for all the stories told of his life, the truth of his passing remains a blank space in history. Why? Because for the Mongols, illness and death were taboos too great to speak of openly. The secret history of the Mongols, the only near contemporary native source, is hauntingly silent on how the Khan met his end. So all we have are whispers and legends. Some say lightning struck him down in a moment of divine reckoning. An early European emissary claimed this, passing the tale from tent to distant court. Marco Polo, the wandering Venetian, wrote that the great Khan fell to an arrow wound to the knee. Others whispered of poison, or darker still, that the Tangut king conjured a magic spell to avenge his ruined kingdom. Then there's the most outrageous tale of all, that the Tangut queen, seized as spoils of war, hid a deadly device within her body that severed the Khan's manhood the moment he took her. A conqueror brought low by treachery in the most intimate act. Behind these myths, though, there's a quieter, almost humble version that the Khan's wife, Yasui, prepared his body herself. She dressed him simply in a white robe, felt boots, and a hat. Then she wrapped him in a white felt blanket filled with sandalwood, binding it with 3 golden straps. The funeral procession carried his riderless horse. Some say a baby camel was buried beside him so its mother would always lead the family back to his secret grave. Others insist a river was diverted. Nature itself enlisted to hide the Khan from the world forever. However, the real shock comes after his passing. How Genghis' passing was erased from history. You see, his generals didn't tell anyone. Not the soldiers, the Mongol people, not even their enemies. Why? Because if news broke during an ongoing war, morale would collapse. Enemies would rise up, smelling weakness. The empire he built could crumble in a single moon. So what did they do? They created a plan so secretive, so ruthless that it became legend. A plan to hide his passing from the entire world. After Genghis's passing, his body was secretly transported back to Mongolia. Not a single whisper escaped that funeral procession. There was extreme secrecy because no one was ever meant to know where the great Khan rested. According to legend, every person who took part in the burial, from warriors to servants, was executed on the spot. A chilling sacrifice to keep his tomb hidden forever. They didn't stop there, though. Thousands of horses were ridden over his grave to flatten the earth and erase any sign of disturbance. The land was left looking untouched, as if nothing had ever happened there. Over time, nature did its part. Grass grew back, trees spread their roots, and whatever clues remained were swallowed by the wild Mongolian landscape. So began one of history's greatest unsolved mysteries. If you've liked our content so far, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. The Secret Burial. For centuries, historians, archaeologists, and adventurers have tried to find his tomb. Ancient scrolls were scoured for hints. Modern satellites scanned the land from space. Expeditions crossed frozen mountains and endless steppes. Yet, despite all this, no one has ever found it. What's even more interesting here is that after Genghis's death, the Mongols didn't see his grave as just a burial site. To them, it was sacred, untouchable, a place holding the spirit of a man they believed was chosen by the eternal blue sky itself. So, where did they bury him? Well, one name stands out in this mystery. Korig, the Great Taboo. This is a vast forbidden region surrounding Burkhan Khaldun, a mountain in northeastern Mongolia. Stretching over 240 square kilometers, this land was sealed off from the world, no outsiders allowed, no questions asked. Apparently, this was royal ground, and only the bloodline of Genghis and his most trusted had the right to set foot there. However, there's an even stranger part to this story. Guarding this sacred land was a special class of warriors known as the Darkhead. These were hereditary guardians chosen for generations to protect this land with their lives. Can you imagine growing up knowing your only duty was to keep people away from a grave no one was allowed to find? The Darkhead patrolled day and night. They performed rituals to keep the land pure and ensured the sacred mountain remained untouched. Keep in mind that this was a place so deeply revered that disturbing it was believed to invite disaster upon the world. Here's what makes it even more mysterious, though. For the Mongols, no effort was too extreme when it came to protecting Genghis Khan's final resting place. Local legends whisper of rivers being diverted to flow over his grave, washing away any trace that he was ever laid to rest there. That wasn't all. Stories tell of thousands of trees planted around the burial site. Over generations, they grew into dense forests, blending the landscape so perfectly that no outsider could ever guess what lay beneath. Even nature itself helped keep the secret. At the same time though, far away from Mongolia, in Ordos, Inner Mongolia, stands a massive mausoleum dedicated to Genghis Khan. A mausoleum with no remains. Its grand architecture attracts thousands every year, paying tribute to the man who built an empire. Yet inside that towering monument, there are no remains. The coffin placed within is empty. Just a symbol, a memorial to honor him in his absence. While the real grave remains lost to the world. So how did the Mongols honor their great Khan without a body to mourn? They turned to his personal effects. According to the legend, within months of his passing, ceremonies were held to venerate his spirit through his possessions, forging an unbreakable link between the people and their fallen ruler. Then came Kublai Khan. Determined to keep his grandfather's memory alive, he built temples in Daidu and Xanadu, dedicated solely to the Khan's cult. In Karakoram, the empire's heart, 9 grand palaces were maintained by imperial officials for these rituals. However, empires rise and fall. So when the Yuan dynasty collapsed in the year 1368, those permanent temples were replaced. Instead, the Mongols created the 8 white yurts, portable mausoleums fashioned from the palaces where Genghis Khan had once lived. Ogidi Khan transformed them into sacred shrines, and they were first stationed at Avarga at the base of the Khentai Mountains in Mongolia's Khentai province. Who guarded these sacred yurts? A special group known as the Darkhead, spiritual caretakers charged with protecting the Khan's memory. Their leader, chosen from the Borjigin clan, carried the title Jinong, a legacy dating back to Kamala, the first to be appointed king of Jin. Of course, the real question here is why build an empty tomb? Was it to distract grave robbers or to ensure the great Khan's spirit remained undisturbed forever? These legends, secrets, and decoys have turned his burial into one of history's greatest enigmas. Even today, respect for this mystery runs deep. Locals still believe disturbing his rest would bring chaos upon the land. However, that hasn't stopped archaeologists, historians, and adventurers from trying. So, what exactly have they done to uncover Genghis Khan's hidden tomb? The high-tech hunt for Genghis Khan's lost tomb. Centuries of secrets couldn't keep modern science away. Today, archaeologists have tools that their ancestors could only dream of. Satellites that scan mountains from space. Radars that peer deep underground without turning a single stone. And all of it has reignited the hunt for Genghis Khan's hidden tomb. One of the boldest missions was led by National Geographic explorer Albert Linuan. Lynn believed that the key lay in the Khentai Mountains of northeastern Mongolia, a place woven tightly into Mongolian history and possibly the final resting ground of the Great Khan. What made his search different though? Well, instead of digging recklessly, Lynn used cutting-edge satellite imagery, magnetometry, and ground-penetrating radar. Even more importantly, he worked side by side with local Mongolian volunteers. This is because for Mongolians, disturbing the land where their ancestors rest is unthinkable. Lynn knew that without their blessing, no discovery would ever be worth it. Together, they scanned the mountains without disrupting a single blade of grass. Their analysis revealed several underground anomalies, mysterious formations that could hold secrets untold for 800 years. However, despite all the promising clues, no definitive tomb was found. Still, Lynn's approach changed everything. It showed the world that technology and cultural respect could work hand in hand in solving ancient mysteries. Of course, he wasn't the first to embark on this quest. The lawyer who challenged Genghis Khan's ghost. Decades earlier, between 1989 and 1992, another ambitious expedition took place known as the Three Rivers Expedition. It united Japanese and Mongolian archaeologists in a joint mission. They turned their focus to the lands surrounding the Wunan, Kurlan, and Tull rivers, aka areas historically teeming with Mongol nobility. Over the years of grueling study, the team identified around 1,380 graves believed to belong to aristocrats of the Mongol Empire. Yet even after surveying hundreds of burial sites, the tomb of Genghis Khan remained elusive, as if the earth itself refused to give up its greatest secret. Yet, one man refused to let the mystery stay buried. Have you heard of Mike Kravitz? This man wasn't an archaeologist or a historian. He was an American lawyer turned adventurer who dedicated over 40 years of his life to finding Genghis Khan's tomb. More than a dozen times, he traveled to Mongolia. Unlike many who relied solely on high-tech scans, Kravitz combined ancient texts, local legends, personal intuition, and old-fashioned fieldwork. He believed the tomb was hidden in plain sight, camouflaged by natural terrain, and guarded by Mongol rituals designed to mislead intruders. However, his expeditions took a dark turn. Stories began to swirl about supernatural forces protecting the grave. Team members fell mysteriously ill. Mechanical equipment failed without explanation. Some locals reported strange dreams after visiting suspected sites. Was it just a coincidence or something more? Many came to believe that Genghiss Khan's tomb was shielded not only by secrecy, but by a spiritual barrier determined to keep outsiders away forever. Then, just when everyone thought they were getting closer, everything changed. Shocking evidence emerged suggesting that the tomb's true location wasn't anywhere near where people had been searching. So, what exactly went wrong? The explorer who shattered Genghis's burial mystery? For centuries, explorers searched the sacred slopes of Burkhan Khaldun, convinced that Genghiss Khan's tomb lay hidden there. But then one man shattered everything they thought they knew. His name was Alan Nichols, an American explorer and former president of the Explorers Club. What did he propose? Nichols introduced a theory so bold it stunned the archaeological world. He suggested that everyone had been looking in the wrong place all along. Instead of Burkhan Khaldun, Nichols believed the Khan's final resting place was hidden in a remote, uncharted peak he called Mountain X. You see, Nichols spent years poring over historical records, decoding cryptic geographical clues and analyzing forgotten texts. His research led him away from northeastern Mongolia to a region closer to the Yellow River in Inner Mongolia, an area steeped in history and scattered with vast unexplored landscapes. Determined to uncover the truth, Nichols assembled a small elite team. They deployed ground-penetrating radar and magnetometers, which were tools capable of peering deep beneath the earth to detect hidden chambers and ancient man-made structures. What they discovered left them stunned. Their equipment picked up unusual subsurface patterns in several locations. Anomalies that hinted at underground chambers or artifacts buried far beneath the rocky terrain. There was a catch, though. These findings were never fully published. The expedition's results remain locked away, adding another layer to the mystery of Genghis Khan's grave. The fact of the matter is that Nichols's expedition wasn't just groundbreaking. It was shrouded in secrecy. Searching for Genghiss Khan's tomb near the Yellow River meant operating in a politically sensitive region full of restricted military zones and guarded access points. Any wrong move could have triggered serious consequences. So, how did he pull it off? Nichols kept his team small. No media coverage or flashy announcements. Every step was planned with precision to avoid attracting attention from local authorities or sparking geopolitical tensions. The secrecy didn't stop there, though. Within the global archaeological community, Nichols became known as the explorer who guarded his findings with an iron grip. Critics asked, why? Hide potential discoveries from the world? For Nichols, the stakes were higher than academic glory. He knew that prematurely revealing any discovery about Genghiss Khan's tomb could ignite cultural tensions or territorial disputes between nations tied to the Khan's legacy. After all, disturbing the grave of a national hero isn't just archaeology. It's a political and spiritual upheaval. Yet, despite the secrecy, whispers of what Nichols uncovered eventually slipped out. During this hidden mission came a moment no one expected. Their instruments detected underground anomalies, patterns so strange and so precise that they pointed to something no one could have imagined buried beneath the ancient soil. The day they found Genghiss Khan's tomb. Generations of speculation, decades of high-tech hunts, and finally the long-hidden tomb believed to belong to Genghiss Khan was uncovered. This wasn't some quick dig with a lucky find, though. The excavation took years of delicate planning involving international cooperation at the highest level. Formal approval was needed from the Mongolian government. UNESCO oversaw the protocols. Even the United Nations sent representatives to ensure every move honored ethical research standards and local traditions. Every step was executed with surgical precision. Experts in history, anthropology, and religious studies worked alongside Mongolian cultural leaders. Their goal was to uncover the truth without dishonoring the past. Only after countless reviews, consultations, and sacred rituals did the operation finally begin. Under the watchful eyes of international observers and local community elders, a small elite team equipped with cutting-edge tools entered the site. What they saw inside left them speechless. They uncovered a vast, intricately constructed burial chamber. The architecture blended influences from across the Mongol Empire, Persia, China, and Central Asia, reflecting the vast reach of Genghis Khan's dominion. Massive stone slabs carved with ancient symbols lined the tomb walls. Ornate weapons lay beside ceremonial armor as if waiting for their warrior's next battle. Delicate scrolls, sealed containers of preserved food offerings, and treasures unseen for a millennium sat untouched in the frozen darkness. Each item told a story of power, conquest, and the spiritual world the Mongols believed awaited their great Khan. Then came the discovery that sent shock waves across the world. A peek inside the tomb. In the center of the tomb lay human remains, bones that told the silent story of a warrior king. Experts examined the skeletal structure carefully. It matched what they would expect from a male leader of the early 13th century. Powerful build, battle-worn joints, the frame of a man who spent his life riding and conquering. There was one question that remained though. What preserved these bones so perfectly for nearly 1,000 years? But it wasn't just the preservation that shocked researchers. It was the DNA results. Genetic analysis revealed links to multiple modern populations across Eurasia, confirming legends that Genghis Khan's bloodline had spread far and wide. However, the team chose not to publicly identify the remains as definitively belonging to Genghis Khan, not yet. Why? Because the implications were staggering. Claiming to have found and disturbed the grave of the most legendary conqueror in human history risked cultural, political, and spiritual backlash of global proportions. Mongolian leaders urged caution. Elders asked for reburial. Some called for a complete sealing of the site. And so, the world was left in suspense. Was it truly Genghis Khan? The clues aligned perfectly: the location, the artifacts, the remains, the DNA, but the final confirmation was left in deliberate ambiguity. In many ways, the discovery answered one of history's greatest questions, yet deepened the mystery even more. Because now we must ask, what do we do with the tomb of a man whose shadow still stretches across continents and centuries? For the Mongolian people, the tomb is not just a burial site. It's sacred ground. A reminder of their nation's soul. For historians, it's a treasure trove of untouched knowledge. For the world, it's a test: can modern science and ancient reverence exist side by side? Today, the site is sealed again. Guarded, protected, and hidden from public view. Not by superstition, but by solemn respect. No tours, no photos, no digging. Only a quiet promise between the living and the dead, that some legacies deserve to rest in peace. And so, the tomb of Genghis Khan, lost for 800 years, found through courage, science, and silence, returns once again to myth. But this time, the myth is real. Hidden beneath the soil, deep within the mountains, lies the silent witness to one of the greatest stories ever told. And perhaps, one day, the world will be ready to hear the full truth.